Got a couple of show commands I wanted to share with you before and after the lease we're about to hopefully give out. And the first one is show IP DHCP pool. You can specify a pool name after show IP DHCP pool if you want to. I only had one, so that's what I ran. Of interest to us right now are leased addresses, which is at 0. And notice it mentions current index 10114. That's going to be the next address to give out. I did something during our break that actually gave out a couple of addresses, so we will check that out. But again, it's 10114 right now. And under show IP DHCP binding, we have nothing. We have a lot of column headers, but that's all we have. And until we get a binding, of course, either dynamic or static, that's the way it's going to be. Let's go ahead and head over to that host, that router in this case, and interface fast 0/0 IP address DHCP. It's not going to be immediate as far as the address assignment goes, but one thing you will see is internet address will be negotiated using DHCP under show interface. And there was our address assignment. There's the message, interface fast 0/0, assigned DHCP address 10114. There's the mask and there's the host name. So it all went pretty much the way we thought it would. So now let's go back to our switch and run show IDHCP pool. You can see right in the middle there we've got one leased address. And then finally, not the final time we're coming back to this command though, I can tell you that. Show IP DHCP binding, and I realize type is cut off there a little bit on the end. It's automatic. Okay, sounds good. Automatic, dynamic, pretty much the same thing. Now, we've got an IP address there of 10114 and something next to it either called client ID or hardware address or username. And that is a long string of characters. We're going to come back to that. Because wouldn't it be fantastic, and you know this is going to happen sooner or later, when you're working with DHCP, you know you're going to have a device that wants to get its address dynamically every time, but it wants to also get the same address dynamically every time. And your first thought may be, why don't you just go to the device? And I'm laughing because that's my first take. But you will run into that. But of course, generally, I would just go to the device. You know, just go into control settings, control panel, whatever kind of device I was working, find the DHCP settings, take it out of DHCP and give it a static address. Some people consider it a little more efficient to do it this way. So we are going to look at that in this section, but not right now, because what I want to talk to you about for a bit here is something called a helper address, because every once in a while, you know, everybody needs some help. Nope, no jokes, please. But we might need some help with our DHCP broadcast messages because we have at least 2 of them going around, maybe 3 in every address acquisition. And as we know, routers accept broadcasts, routers create broadcasts, routers do not forward broadcasts by default. And that can present an issue with DHCP messages when a router is between the requesting host and the DHCP server, because of course the first message in the entire process, you know, it's a broadcast. And by default, the router's going to get that broadcast and say, you know, what do you want from my life? You know, I ain't forwarding it. That's not what I do. So the DHCP server's on the other side of the router. It can't get that broadcast. We can't even begin to get that host an IP address. Now, using IP helper address, the command that is, on a router or a multi-layer switch in the right location allows the device to translate that broadcast to a unicast. So it's forwarded normally. And in this particular diagram, if we have that DHCP server at 10115, router gets the DHCP message in, IP helper address 10115 is configured on the receiving interface, not the transmitting interface, hintity hint hint. And the router says, hey, I'm going to take care of that thing for you. And it does take care of that thing for us. It turns it into a unicast so we can get something done. Now again, can't stress this enough. It's an easy command. Not a lot of options here. The use of it very straightforward. But there's one place you can go wrong, and you are not going to go wrong there because you're going to remember, you're going to hear my voice in your head when you see a question about this one day. The command IP helper address goes on the interface that will be receiving the broadcast, not the interface closest to the destination. And it is kind of intuitive to say, oh, okay, you know, we need that going out. No, you need it coming in, because if it's not on that interface coming in, the router's just going to drop it, and it doesn't matter what you have on the transmitting interface. The command syntax, frankly, it's exactly the same whether you're configuring this command on a multi-layer switch SVI or a router physical interface. I actually have both here for you on the board, and we'll just look at them here. You can put it on an SVI here. I've got interface VLAN 10, IP helper address. Your options are destination address. The helper address is global and VRF. Don't worry about the last two. 10511 here, or wherever we needed to send it to. That's the location of the server. So if I went with the diagram that I had there, it would be 10115. But you just want to put the IP address of your DHCP server in there. Now, a couple things about this command. If you got multiple DHCP servers that your switch needs help reaching, there's no problem with configuring multiple helper addresses. And you can do those on the interface. And let's actually do that. I want to show you that. And we'll go over to a router and do it. Router 1. And again, here's a router, and I got that config off another router, and then we've got a multi-layer switch here. So let's say that we had a DHCP server at 10511, and redundancy, not an option we need to concern ourselves with, and that's it. But what if you had another one at 10512? See, the router's not going to yell at you for putting two of those in. They're both going to be in your config. That's all there is to it. So you can put multiple helper addresses on an interface, and there's nothing illegal about it. Now, a device that's running this command, IP helper address, to help with DH server reachability in the fashion we're looking at here, it's said to be a DHCP relay agent. And that's really what it's doing. It's just relaying the message. That's accurate, but not entirely accurate, because I just want to remind you of this more for your real-world work than for the exam. But there are 9 common UDP service broadcasts that are actually helped by IP helper address. Time, TACACS, DNS, BootP DHCP server, BootP DHCP client, TFTP, the NetBIOS name service, the NetBIOS datagram service, and IEN-116 name service. Whew, all benefit from this command. So helper address, not a difficult command to work with at all. Just put it on the receiving interface and you will be more than fine with it. On very rare occasion, you may need to create a static IP address binding, which is also called a manual binding. That's actually how the switch is going to refer to it when we're doing this in your network. And that rare occasion is the one I spoke about on the last video, where you need DHCP to give a client an address, but it needs to get the same address every single time. And I'm saying rare in a hopeful voice because a lot of people just hate these. As soon as you mention it, it's like, oh man, I hate those things. They're really not that bad. I'm going to relieve any pain in the butt you have about this, in your head or anywhere. We're going to get rid of that because we're going to do one live. And there's a little bit, I don't want to say of misinformation, but there's a little bit of lacking information about this particular feature. And it goes back to something I want to show you right here under under Show IP DHCP binding. Whatever this value is under this header, we got to get it involved. I really hope we don't have to type all that stuff. We'll find out on the very next video. I'll see you there.